Imagine walking into a place where you're deliberately overlooked, underestimated, and even laughed at. Now, imagine that very dismissal becomes your greatest weapon. This was the stark reality for Elias Thorne in 1950s Los Angeles, a truth he would turn into his most potent advantage. The Grand Central Bank, a financial fortress in that era, stood as a monument to polished, unyielding authority. Its main hall, a vast expanse of cool marble and shimmering brass, buzzed with the hushed rhythm of commerce. Sunlight streamed through lofty, arched windows, illuminating tiny dust motes dancing in the air, a quiet contrast to the rigid social order that held sway both within the bank and across the city. Through this opulent setting moved Elias Thorne, a man whose quiet dignity belied the sharp intellect hidden beneath his calm demeanor. Clad in the humble uniform of a janitor, he guided his cleaning cart with deliberate grace, his eyes keen and insightful, missing nothing. He observed the brisk movements of tellers, the tailored suits of executives, and the subtle, often dismissive, glances that marked their interactions. One ordinary afternoon, the dignified quiet of the main hall was shattered with a burst of loud laughter. A cluster of bank personnel, including a young executive, Mr. Sterling, and his assistants, Ms. Albright and Mr. Finch, had gathered near an ornate marble column. Their conversation, relaxed and tinged with an air of superiority, seemed to center on a black man who had recently dared to inquire about a loan, or perhaps a general contempt for those they considered beneath them. As Elias passed, Mr. Sterling's gaze flickered over him, a condescending gesture or comment about the help, suggesting Elias was non-existent, completely unworthy of their notice. Elias offered a faint, almost imperceptible upturn of his lips, a knowing light in his eyes that went entirely unnoticed. The profound irony of this moment, the casual disregard for a man who held the key to their very future, escaped them completely. Elias's presence at the bank was no accident. He wasn't merely cleaning. He was engaged in a meticulous act of intelligence gathering, listening carefully and absorbing every detail. This strategic presence was a calculated maneuver, a deliberate choice to operate beneath the radar. In a society deeply rooted in racial segregation, where black men were systematically blocked from positions of influence, a black janitor was often made invisible by the very prejudice designed to oppress him. This invisibility, paradoxically, became a powerful shield, enabling Elias to move freely, collect information, and observe the bank's operations without raising any alarms. The staff's underestimation, fueled by their racial bias and fixed ideas of status, became a potent asset in Elias's plan. Their laughter, a clear sign of their narrow view, served only to underscore their unawareness of the true ambition and genius at work. This dynamic set the stage for a dramatic reversal of fortunes, a testament to the ingenuity forced upon marginalized communities to navigate and ultimately dismantle oppressive systems. What if the man they mocked held the keys to their future? Stay tuned, because Elias Thorne's story is about to redefine what true power looks like. Before we dive deeper, if you believe true power isn't always visible, hit that like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Elias Thorne's extraordinary journey began not amidst the gleaming towers of Los Angeles but in the harsh realities of the Jim Crow-era South. Born in a small Texas town, he possessed an innate brilliance, an insatiable curiosity for the intricate world of finance and business, a world that, by all societal constructs of the time, was meant to be impenetrable to him. As a boy, he would shine shoes, not solely for the meager income, but as a strategic vantage point. From street corners, he would listen intently to the conversations of white businessmen, meticulously absorbing their discussions of investments, deals, and market movements. Every overheard word was a lesson, every hushed negotiation a blueprint for a future he was forbidden to build. His father, a man intimately acquainted with the brutal realities of their time, had cautioned him with a heavy heart. "A Negro man can't earn money with this," he'd said, gesturing to Elias's books. "White man won't let him, no matter how good at it you are." Yet Elias's spirit was unyielding. His quiet retort, a whispered defiance that foreshadowed his destiny, maybe not in Texas. It was a spark of hope, a refusal to accept the limitations imposed by a prejudiced society. In 1945, driven by the promise of greater opportunity, Elias, accompanied by his supportive wife, Lena, relocated to California. He began building his foundation from the ground up, starting with a meticulous cleaning service, then expanding to a waste paper collection business. Through relentless diligence and meticulous saving, he amassed enough capital to acquire his very first property in Los Angeles. These early successes, however, quickly brought him face to face with the insidious, pervasive systemic racism embedded within the nation's financial and real estate industries. Banks routinely denied loans to Black Americans, a discriminatory practice known as redlining, which effectively confined them to segregated, impoverished neighborhoods and suffocated their economic potential. Elias encountered direct and painful limitations. Even for successful Black businessmen, there were explicit restrictions on the scale and nature of investments they could pursue. His attempt to purchase an apartment building in a white neighborhood was met with individual racism from residents. Doors literally slammed in his face. These repeated encounters with seemingly insurmountable barriers led him to a crucial realization. Direct confrontation, in many instances, would be futile. A different, more strategic approach was imperative. These experiences, particularly his father's poignant warning and the direct encounters with loan denials and redlining, vividly illustrated that traditional pathways to wealth were not merely difficult but explicitly blocked for Black Americans. This systemic exclusion necessitated a radical shift from overt entrepreneurial ambition to a covert, innovative strategy. His formidable intellect, combined with these racial barriers, compelled him to devise a system of invisible ownership. This progression highlights a crucial dynamic. Systemic racism, through its denial of legitimate economic opportunities, inadvertently forced innovation and the development of hidden strategies for both personal wealth accumulation and broader community upliftment. Elias's core belief, the only time a man is truly rich is when he controls money, coupled with his later powerful conviction that the inability to secure a loan equated to exclusion from the American dream, revealed a profound truth. Economic freedom, in his view, was the surest path to improving conditions for Black Americans. This perspective elevated his pursuit of wealth beyond mere personal enrichment. It became a strategic imperative for collective liberation. He understood that true freedom, especially within a capitalist framework, is inextricably linked to economic power and access. Elias's journey wasn't just about personal wealth, it was about rewriting the rules for an entire community. What historical figure, against all odds, inspires you with their ingenuity and resilience? Elias's initial real estate ventures, while profitable, quickly revealed the ceiling imposed by racial discrimination. To truly operate within the white-dominated financial world without triggering the inherent biases that would inevitably shut him down, he needed a different approach. His first strategic move involved forming a partnership with a white real estate investor, Mr. Albright, who served as the public face for their transactions. This arrangement allowed Elias to gain invaluable experience and quietly amass significant wealth, reaching an impressive $1.5 million by 1954. Following Mr. Albright's unexpected death, Elias resolved to pursue an even bolder mission. He sought out Cyrus Vance, a successful and charismatic Black businessman who owned two popular nightclubs in Los Angeles. Initially, Elias, a straight-laced visionary, harbored reservations, viewing Cyrus as having a more flamboyant lifestyle. However, after countless doors continued to slam shut in his face due to his race, Elias recognized Cyrus's street smarts, influential connections, and audacious spirit as invaluable assets. Their partnership, though unconventional in its genesis, was forged in a shared ambition and a deep-seated desire to uplift their community. Their most audacious plan necessitated a new kind of face, a white man they could meticulously coach to appear as the legitimate CEO of their burgeoning empire. They found Arthur Finch, a young, working-class white man who had previously assisted Elias with renovations. Elias and Cyrus embarked on a rigorous program of tutoring Arthur in finance, business etiquette, and the subtle art of appearing as a wealthy, influential investor. This transformative process, akin to a high-stakes dramatic transformation, prepared Arthur to navigate exclusive white spaces such as golf courses, where many significant deals were discreetly brokered. The meticulous planning for their major acquisitions felt less like traditional business dealings and more like a precisely choreographed operation. Elias, Cyrus, and Arthur would convene, strategizing every detail. Elias provided the unparalleled financial genius and intricate calculations. Cyrus brought the essential social connections and a touch of theatrical flair. Arthur supplied the necessary public persona. This strategic alliance was a direct response to the systemic racial barriers of the era. Elias and Cyrus did not merely use white men as fronts. They deliberately leveraged the societal privilege afforded to white individuals in the 1950s and 60s. By coaching Arthur to embody the image of a successful white businessman, they effectively co-opted the very system that sought to exclude them. This was not about Arthur's inherent skill, but about his racial identity, granting access and credibility that Elias and Cyrus, despite their superior intellect and capital, were systematically denied. This approach vividly illustrates how deeply ingrained racial bias was within the financial system, demonstrating that access and opportunity were often predicated on skin color rather than merit. It forced marginalized groups to innovate by exploiting the system's prejudices. While their ultimate goal was social good and economic justice, the methods they employed, using public figures, operating under the radar, were essential to circumvent discriminatory laws. The very act of their planning, likened to a sophisticated operation, highlights the moral complexities inherent in fighting systemic injustice, where operating outside or cleverly manipulating the rules designed to maintain that injustice becomes a necessary, albeit ethically challenging, form of resistance. With their strategic alliance solidified and their plan meticulously refined, Elias and Cyrus set their sights on the Financial Tower, a towering edifice in downtown Los Angeles. This building was not merely a prime piece of real estate, it represented a profound symbolic act, a direct and audacious challenge to the very institutions that had systematically denied Black Americans economic freedom and opportunity for generations. To control this building was to claim a piece of the power structure that had so long excluded them. The acquisition plan unfolded with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Arthur Finch, impeccably dressed and thoroughly coached, led the negotiations, presenting the facade of a shrewd, wealthy investor. All the while, Elias and Cyrus remained in the background, their true roles concealed. At times, Elias would be present in his janitor's uniform, quietly observing the expressions of the bank executives across the negotiation table, noting their reactions, or even mopping the floors of the very building he was in the process of acquiring. Cyrus, with his characteristic flair, would occasionally pose as Arthur's chauffeur, offering subtle, strategic advice during drives to and from meetings. This duality of presence, Elias physically occupying the lowest rung of the building's social hierarchy while intellectually and financially controlling its highest, represented a powerful subversion of established spatial and social hierarchies. It demonstrated that true power is not always visible or aligned with societal expectations, offering a potent metaphor for overturning oppressive structures from within, by understanding and manipulating their internal logic. The deal progressed, culminating in Elias trading his extensive portfolio of residential property deeds for a controlling interest in the corporation that owned the Financial Tower. The moment of acquisition, while not a literal hours later event in the sense of a commercial real estate closing, marked the dramatic reveal of Elias's true power and ownership. It was the point at which the unseen architect took undeniable control. The casual laughter of the bank staff from earlier in the day, their dismissive glances at the poor janitor, stood in stark, compelling contrast to the profound reality that the man they had so readily overlooked now held the reins of their very building. This narrative compression, emphasizing the revelation rather than the literal timeline, powerfully highlights the profound ignorance born of prejudice. The staff's laughter, a direct consequence of their racial bias, was juxtaposed with Elias's quiet, strategic mastery, delivering a compelling sense of poetic justice. Imagine the look on their faces. What does this reversal of fortune teach us about judging a book by its cover, especially when that cover is shaped by prejudice? With the Financial Tower firmly under their control, Elias and Cyrus's ambition extended far beyond personal wealth accumulation. Their true mission was to systematically dismantle the deeply entrenched barriers that had plagued their community for generations. They embarked on a new phase, acquiring banks in Texas, Elias's home state, continuing to utilize Arthur Finch as their trusted frontman. These newly acquired, Black-owned banks became an indispensable lifeline, providing essential loans for homes, appliances, and businesses to African Americans who had been routinely denied by white institutions. Through their efforts, they were able to help African Americans participate in the economy in ways they were never able to before. This commitment underscores a fundamental principle. Elias and Cyrus did not merely accumulate wealth, they actively deployed it to create life-changing opportunities for African Americans. Their acquisition of banks in Texas was specifically designed to provide capital to Black communities, directly addressing the critical lack of access to capital that served as a powerful tool supporting the Jim Crow status quo. This reveals that their wealth was a means to a greater end, social justice and the upliftment of their community. This perspective reframes the narrative from individual success to collective liberation, suggesting that true wealth, particularly for marginalized communities, lies not just in personal accumulation but in its strategic deployment to dismantle systemic barriers and empower others. As their empire expanded and their true influence grew, particularly their control over banks that had previously excluded Black communities, they inevitably attracted unwanted and hostile attention. A racist power base in Texas began to scrutinize its operations with increasing intensity. The situation was further complicated by Arthur Finch, who, perhaps becoming overly confident, engaged in financial irregularities that compounded their vulnerability. His actions created openings for those who sought to bring down Elias and Cyrus. The inevitable confrontation arrived in 1965. Elias and Cyrus were arrested by the FBI and charged with misappropriation of bank funds. It was a moment that brought their hidden operations into the stark light of the legal system, threatening to undo everything they had built for their community. The inevitable confrontation arrived in 1965, not with a bang, but with the cold, calculated procedure of a courtroom. Elias and Cyrus faced arrest by the FBI, charged with misappropriation of bank funds. The grand empire they had so carefully constructed, designed to uplift their community, now stood accused within the very system they had sought to circumvent. In court, Elias Thorne, despite repeated warnings that he would lose his immunity, delivered a powerful, impassioned testimony that resonated throughout the chambers. With searing clarity, he declared that the nation's founding documents, which boldly proclaimed all men were created equal, were for many citizens a profound lie. He articulated the undeniable truth that if a man could not secure a loan, he could not establish a business, build wealth, or acquire a home. He was therefore excluded from the American dream. He directly challenged the court and the very system it represented. Why is it so important to you to exclude an entire race of people from the American dream? It was a question that cut to the core of institutional prejudice, exposing the hypocrisy of a system that professed equality while actively denying it. This moment highlighted a critical truth. Despite their profound efforts to address systemic injustice, Elias and Cyrus were imprisoned, and their assets were seized. The charges against them, misappropriation of bank funds, can be understood as the legal system's punitive response to those who dared to subvert its racialized structures, rather than a genuine pursuit of justice. This tragic outcome reinforces the pervasive nature of racial injustice, demonstrating how the legal framework itself can be weaponized to perpetuate discrimination and punish those who challenge the status quo, even when their actions are morally just. Elias's words echo through history, challenging us to confront the hypocrisy of systems that preach equality but practice exclusion. What systemic injustices do you believe still need to be brought into the light today? Elias and Cyrus were unjustly sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. In a sweeping move, the federal authorities seized all their assets, including the 177 buildings they owned and their fortunes. It was a devastating blow, a seemingly complete dismantling of the empire they had meticulously built to serve their community. Yet, in a final act of remarkable foresight and strategic brilliance, Elias had anticipated such a devastating outcome. Before his powerful testimony, he had instructed Arthur Finch to discreetly acquire 2 properties in the Bahamas for him and Cyrus, ensuring they would have a foundation upon their eventual release. A quiet safeguard against the system's crushing weight. 3 years after their courageous testimonies, a profound and undeniable shift occurred within the nation. The U.S. Congress passed the Fair Housing Act of 1968, a landmark piece of legislation that finally outlawed racial discrimination in housing and property transactions across the country. While numerous factors contributed to the passage of this pivotal act, the audacious efforts of visionary men like Elias and Cyrus, who so boldly exposed the deep-seated injustices embedded within the financial system, were undeniably instrumental in compelling the nation to confront its unfulfilled promises of equality. Despite the personal loss of their accumulated assets and the hardship of imprisonment, their actions were instrumental in the fight against housing discrimination and directly preceded this landmark legislation. This progression powerfully demonstrates that the impact of fighting systemic injustice extends far beyond immediate personal victories or defeats. Their sacrifice created a profound ripple effect, laying crucial groundwork for future, broader victories and inspiring subsequent movements and legislative reforms. Their story reminds us that even in defeat, a righteous struggle can plant the seeds for monumental change. The story of Elias Thorne and Cyrus Vance is not merely a tale of a janitor who bought a building. It is a profound testament to visionary defiance, strategic brilliance, and an unwavering commitment to justice. They built an empire not for personal glory or individual enrichment, but with the explicit purpose of empowering a community that had been systematically denied access and opportunity. Their legacy teaches us that true wealth lies not just in personal accumulation but in its strategic deployment to dismantle systemic barriers and empower others. This perspective aligns with a timeless wisdom. True treasures are those in the kingdom of heaven. Kingdom wealth and greatness are built in serving others. Elias's philanthropic purpose, woven throughout his ambitious endeavors, embodies this truth. Despite losing his accumulated fortune, his legacy is defined by the life-changing opportunities he created for his community and his undeniable contribution to landmark civil rights law. His story serves as a powerful reminder of the strength of perseverance against overwhelming prejudice and a profound testament to the truth that genuine change often begins with those brave enough to challenge the invisible rules that uphold injustice. Elias Thorne's legacy reminds us that true power lies not in the wealth you accumulate but in the barriers you break for others. If his courage inspired you, hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe to Real Black Stories. Join our community as we continue to shine a light on the unsung heroes who fought for a more just world. What invisible barriers are you committed to breaking?